It's a final push. Gunfire heard at Westgate Mall as Kenyan security forces move to take control of all floors. You are banned. An Egyptian court outlaws Muslim Brotherhood. This is Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program.
We're expecting to invest 350 million euros in Africa with our projects, and it's a huge amount, and we will not take away €1.
The Kenyan shilling and shares have dipped after the mall attack, but investors remain confident. And Manchester City mercilessly thrashed neighbours Man United in an eagerly awaited EPL encounter. And we begin with this developing story in Nairobi, where more than 10 suspects have now been arrested over the Westgate Mall attack. Kenyan police say they have been taken in for questioning. And that news emerged as Kenyan security forces stepped up their attempt to end the siege. Up to 15 gunmen attacked the mall on Saturday, killing scores of people and taking an unknown number hostage. Somali group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack, and the official death toll is now at 62. However, authorities warn that the number could rise. The government says 3 of the attackers have also been killed. Let's get more on what is going on at the very moment with Penina Karibe, who is standing by at the Westgate shopping mall. Penina, you are at the Westgate Mall grounds and watching the happenings and the developments just a few meters away. What is the situation there?
Well, Beatrice, I can tell you it's been largely peaceful since about 5 p.m. when we last had a heavy exchange of fire between what we believed was the Kenya Defence Forces and the attack inside the mall. Since then, it's been quiet. We do have a lone military chopper that's been flying around this area, and we understand that's because it's keeping a keen eye on developments within the mall. As you know, Beatrice, we've been locked out of the mall. So we understand that's the pilots and part of the crew, the KDF forces in that chopper, trying to just keep a keen eye so that the attackers inside do not get any kind of reinforcement or assistance from any sympathizers from outside. But I can tell you it's been quite a dramatic day here, because we've had about 10 explosions from within the mall. It's been very unclear who has been doing what. Earlier on, we had speculation that perhaps it might have been the KDF trying to bomb the place. Then we had some other reports saying that maybe it was the attackers. Finally, the Interior Minister saying that it was the mattresses that were put alight just to try and throw into disarray the efforts of the KDF. I can also tell you we've had word about some hostages being rescued by the KDF. How many, we do not know. We've also seen the police having a difficult time trying to control the crowds. You know, because today was a working day. We had so many people crowding this place, just trying to get a sense of what's happening around here. And police were saying those people are now becoming a threat to the operations here. They're also putting their lives in danger. From time to time, the police would throw tear gas canisters at these people to try and push them away. So it's been quite a chaotic day here, Beatrice. We still do not know how many attackers are inside the mall. We do not know how many hostages are inside the mall and if they are alive or not, Beatrice. Very little information we're getting at this point.
All right, very little information coming out, Penina, but has there been any progress whatsoever made by the security forces in gaining control over the attackers? Earlier on, they had indicated that they had taken control over, they had secured about 2 floors.
Well, we did hear from the Interior Minister about 3 hours back, and he said that they had now secured all the 4 floors. He said that the attackers had hidden in various locations inside the 4 floors of the building, Beatrice. But now, a few hours after that, we heard from sources within the KDF that they had intelligence on exactly where these attackers were, and so they were optimistic that they would end the siege pretty soon. How soon, though, we do not quite know. There are no indications as to when this will come to an end, Beatrice. Like I said, there's very little information information being given to us. What I know, however, is there were indications that there could have been people inside who were freed, but we understand those are not people that had been captured by the attackers. These were people, because when the siege happened on Saturday, they scampered and looked for safety in other places within the building, and KDF managed to rescue them today. We couldn't be able to talk to them and verify the stories independently from these people, but that's what we got. Those are the reports we were getting from here, Beatrice. So we don't really know what exactly is going on in there. We do not know the state of the building. Like I said, we understand that there were some bombings that took place there, what the Interior Minister referred to as mattresses being put on fire. The state of the building still unknown at this moment. So there's very little information, but I can tell you, Beatrice, it looks like this is something that perhaps might drag on until the morning.
All right, CCTV's Penina Karibe at the Westgate Mall, where the siege continues into day 3. Well, the Interior Ministry says the hostage takers are trapped and that most of the hostages have been freed. But the Red Cross says more than 60 people are still missing. CCTV's Robert Nagila has more.
Gunfire had broken out early this morning. Then, just after lunchtime, a series of explosions, and within seconds, evidence that the mall was ablaze. As troops rushed in, many suspected this signaled the final phase of the Westgate siege. Now, we are being told that the 2 explosions we just had were controlled explosions by the Kenyan military. However, unfortunately, we're unable at this particular time to say exactly where the 2 explosions were set off, because we're about 300 meters away from the building itself. However, I can tell you that the area surrounding the building where we are and around Westlands is now on lockdown. The official story, though, is confused.
Smoke you are seeing from the building is as a result of the terrorists setting some mattress on fire to distract our action. I am aware that indications are that the building have been blown off, but nothing could be further from the truth.
Kenya's police chief says his officers actually started the fire.
We have an idea who these people are, and they are clearly a multinational collection from all over the world. We have an idea, and we also have an idea that this is not clearly a local event. We are fighting global terrorism here.
But the word on the hostages is still not clear. The Interior Ministry says most have been rescued. Our sources paint a far grimmer picture. And as darkness fell here, there were yet more explosions, yet more gunfire, and no sign of any more hostages coming out. Robert Nagela, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, one of Nairobi's busiest hospitals has been put on standby for casualties from the siege. The MP Shah Hospital has already treated scores of injured since Saturday. CCTV's Famida Miller has more.
Just 1 block from Westgate, staff here at MP Shah Hospital have been struggling to help those pulled from the mayhem at the mall. And on Monday, as smoke billowed from Westgate, they gathered preparing for more casualties. Now, many of the injured brought in since Saturday suffered shrapnel or gunshot wounds. For staff here, it's something they've never seen on such a scale. The sheer numbers have been daunting, and volunteers have been brought in to field inquiries for people looking for their loved ones, looking for family members, looking for friends. 3 days in, 15 bodies still lie uncollected in the mortuary. Their family members may simply not know, or may themselves still be trapped in that smoking mall. Famida Miller, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.
For journalists who have amassed near Westgate Mall these past few days, this sort of activity is one of the drawbacks of the job.
And for the people who live and work in this Westlands area, their prayer is that the situation may soon be contained, that life can return to normal.
It is a crazy Monday. There's a lot of tension here and there. People are afraid of everything. I was a little bit late because I want to know from the office whether we are working or not.
The mall forms a large part of our clientele, but now no one is going there. We've also been forced to reduce the prices just to encourage people to take public transport. Waiting for passengers used to take 5 minutes, but now it takes 30 or more.
I have owned a business here for over 12 years, and usually we will be very busy right now, but we are shut. And while the situation at Westgate is a major cause, we feel that the curious onlookers milling around are scaring away anyone who would have wanted to come and buy.
Until this Saturday, Westlands had been known for its upmarket malls and expensive hotels. Now it is the scene of one of Africa's worst terror attacks. Long after the cameras leave, the people left behind will be trying to rebuild. Celestine Carone, CCTV, in Westlands, Nairobi.
Let's get the global reaction to this developing situation in Nairobi. And we're now joined by Nina Maria Potts in Washington and CCTV's Dan Whitehead live in London. Dan, let me start off with you. Now, there are indications from the Al-Shabaab claiming on their Twitter feeds, though, that some of the terrorists may be of British nationality. Is there any reaction, though, from London on this?
Well, the official reaction has been, I spoke to the Foreign Office just a couple of hours ago. They have been quick to confirm that they will not speculate on whether any British nationals have been involved in the Westgate shopping centre attack, but they do say it is entirely possible. This started from a Twitter account which was promptly shut down. The first Twitter account stating that a 24-year-old man from London was one of the attackers. As I say, that account was then shut down. A second Twitter account claiming to be from Al-Shabaab was set up. In it, it suggested that Samantha Lewthwaite was one of the attackers. Now, Samantha Lewthwaite is known to British security services and indeed police worldwide. She is dubbed the White Widower. She was the wife of Jermaine Lindsay, who was involved in the July 7th bombings here in London. What we do know about Samantha Lewthwaite is that she is wanted by the Kenyan authorities over a suspected link to a terror cell. She fled from Kenya to Somalia in 2012 and has not been seen since. And now there are reports which we heard that some of the attackers were women. Now, these two Twitter reports from these accounts from Al-Shabaab were quickly dismissed by one of Al-Shabaab's military commanders, who calls himself Abu Omar, who said the reports that British and US nationals were involved as the attackers in Kenya are baseless. He also says that the reports that any women were involved are unfounded. So there is certainly confusion and no conjoined thought between the leaders of Al-Shabaab as to whether or not there were any British nationals involved.
All right. Nina, though, there in Washington, there have also been reports that some of the attackers there could have been American citizens, but American authorities were looking into this. There are American citizens in casualties here. What's the reaction from the United States?
Well, we are also still waiting for any sort of official response to these unconfirmed claims that Dan was alluding to there. We have heard allegations that there were several gunmen recruited in the US. Again, those reports are unconfirmed, and the allegation, the claim that they came from several US states, including Maine and Missouri and Arizona. The FBI refusing to comment. We have heard sources say that it's impossible at this very early stage to verify whether or not those names and places of origin were even legitimate, and we've heard warnings too of rushing to any sorts of conclusions. US lawmakers also very hasty to say that any idea that recruitment on US soil was happening in refugee processing centers in several states across America, that it's just too premature to say. But the Obama administration and the White House under mounting pressure now to explain how it missed, how US intelligence missed any signs that Al-Shabaab was planning this Nairobi attack.
All right, Dan, and that is the situation, though, because there has been concern in the past of this radicalization of the Al-Shabaab group and the Al-Qaeda group, you know, recruiting people in the West and then training them in Somalia and other places. What are authorities there saying about this?
Well, we do know that David Cameron has returned and cut short a trip from Scotland to Balmoral, where he is currently right now hosting this COBRA emergency meeting. That is ongoing. And under that meeting will be two main points. One of those to establish just who, if any, British nationals were involved in this attack in Kenya, and also to further establish who the British casualties are. We do know that 4 British nationals have died in the attack. One of those, it appears, is Ross Langdon. That has not been confirmed by the Foreign Office. However, his company, which he works for, an architect's firm, has already put a message on its website saying that he was profoundly talented and full of life. Himself and his partner, Elif Yavuz, both died in the attack. But within this COBRA emergency meeting, they will be discussing these concerns that young British nationals are travelling to Somalia and allegations that they are being trained by Al-Shabaab for terrorist attacks. MI5 last year admitted that Somalia is showing some of the dangerous characteristics which we saw in Afghanistan in terms of training and the way that terrorism is breeding there and recruiting some people from Britain. So that will be of a big concern and a big factor within COBRA meeting this afternoon.
All right, Nina, though terrorism has been a concern for East Africa for a while now, since the 1998 bombings in Kenya and in Tanzania, though there has been some bombings as well in Nigeria, Pakistan and Kenya now. Again, this is a concern for the region here. How big a concern is it, though, for the United States?
Well, it's a huge concern. The White House is under fierce criticism today and over the weekend about its approach to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. The criticism is that it's focused far too much of its energy and resources on drone strikes in Pakistan and Yemen, and has only really conducted sort of occasional drone strikes against Al-Qaeda top leaders as they've surfaced in Somalia. But the whole approach in East Africa has been very much to support African peacekeepers there rather than make a concerted effort to contain Al-Shabaab. And that's partly because of the delay and the debate within the Obama administration. Al-Shabaab was only declared a terrorist organization in 2008. The idea in Washington until then was that it was very much focused on domestic tribal issues. The White House has defended its approach and said that it takes and has taken a very balanced approach to Al-Shabaab in East Africa. But yeah, I mean, there are now serious questions as to whether or not Al-Shabaab has changed its scope in terms of its aspirations and its ability to attack cross-border. Over the weekend, a lot of debate in the US as to whether or not Al-Shabaab presents a more direct threat to American citizens on American soil. This idea that shopping malls here in the US may also be insecure targets for a group that appears to be actively recruiting. The FBI, I should emphasize, will not say whether or not that's the case.
All right, Nina Maria Potts joining us there from Washington, and Dan Whitehead in London. To you both, thank you. Well, let's now cross over to Johannesburg, where Dr. Jackie Celias, a security analyst from the Institute for Security Studies, is standing by with more on this. Dr. Jack, now the attack has been on a scale not witnessed before in Kenya. In your opinion, do you think Kenya was well prepared in terms of analysis of the security situation?
Good evening. I think these preparations for something like this are always difficult. I know the Westland Shopping Centre quite well. It's large, it's busy, there is security around at the entrances. And when something like this happens, particularly in the chaotic traffic congestion that is Kenya, it's extremely difficult to react quickly. So I think Kenya seems to get on top of the situation. And the impression now is that they've managed to contain the situation. But if you have terrorists that are prepared to kill and to die in the course of the attack, it's really very difficult to be able to be prepared and to contain this type of situation. So generally, I think it's gone probably as best as one can expect it to have gone.
Well, it is day 3, though, of the siege there. What options did Kenyan security forces have in hand to neutralize the attackers before it got to this stage?
Our understanding is that different groups of about 10 to 15 terrorists entered the shopping center through different routes and then started moving from level to level, from shop to shop, killing people indiscriminately. The security guards that are in the area obviously don't have the weaponry and the training to be able to deal with this. So I think that in the first hours there is inevitably a large degree of chaos in responding to a situation like this. I think it's very difficult. I'm not in Nairobi. It is very difficult to be able to second guess the tactics on the ground. Certainly what we need to do is to leave the Kenyans to lead on the situation. I think it would be bad news for radicalization in the region if the Americans or the British are seen to be taking the lead. They are there to support and to advise. But the Kenyans are well trained. In actual fact, the ISS where I work had a team in Kenya last week providing counterterrorism training. So there's a lot happening in the region.
All right. President Uhuru Kenyatta, though, has said for the moment it remains a Kenyan security forces operation. What's your analysis of the operation so far?
Well, you know, this is very similar to the kind of attack that we saw in Mumbai. You may remember the terrorist attack on the hotel that lasted for several hours, a few days, if I remember correctly, going from room to room, shooting and killing people, a different environment. It is a shopping center that we're speaking about. And the first priority is always to try and make sure that the innocent bystanders aren't hurt. So getting them out and not getting caught in the crossfire, I think, is very difficult. 170 people have been wounded, about 70 have been killed in Kenya. I think it's too early to really judge exactly what the tactics are that the Kenyans have used, and we have to wait before jumping to conclusions on what's happened.
All right. Government officials have said 62 people have so far been killed, 175 injured, over 1,000 already rescued from the Westgate Mall. Well, Dr. Jackie Silias, a security analyst from the Institute for Security Studies, thank you very much for joining us on Africa Live. Now, judges at the International Criminal Court on Monday adjourned the trial of Kenyan Deputy President William Ruto for a week to allow him return home and deal with the hostage crisis at the Westgate Nairobi Mall that has left at least 62 people dead. William Ruto's lawyers had asked judges to meet in an emergency session on Sunday to adjourn the trial. William Ruto and Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta face charges of crimes against humanity in relation to their alleged role in coordinating a wave of violence that swept Kenya in the aftermath of the country's contested 2007 elections. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto are complying with court summonses, but have previously asked to be excused from attending every session in view of the responsibilities attached to the high offices they both hold. You're watching Africa Live. Coming up, you are banned. An Egyptian court outlaws the Muslim Brotherhood. An Egyptian court on Monday banned the Muslim Brotherhood from carrying out any activities in the country. The court also ordered the government to confiscate the group's assets. The move comes as part of a crackdown on the Islamist group, in which more than 1,000 members have been arrested. Security forces have killed hundreds of its supporters and rounded up thousands more since Mohamed Morsi's ouster in July. The Brotherhood won parliamentary and presidential elections after former leader Hosni Mubarak was overthrown in 2011.
The court only deals with the situation. Freezing the assets and activity of the Muslim Brotherhood will lead to dissolving the group. The verdict means that the group is once again banned and anyone belonging to it will be violating the law. This is the end of the Muslim Brotherhood after it ran Egypt as a group rather than as a state.
The verdict has been held professionally. It was expected and aspired by the majority. The Muslim Brotherhood can no longer return to politics with this verdict. The verdict, however, could be appealed, and for our brothers who found it unsatisfactory, they will appeal.
Let's get more details now from CCTV's Adel Mahroui. Adel, what did the court say when making that verdict?
Well, the court basically says that it has decided to ban all the activities of the organization of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And among it, the Muslim Brotherhood as a branch or a subgroup of the organization, its NGO, and any sub-organization related to it or belonging to it or even in relation to it. And any organization that is owned by it or receives aid from it. Also, any NGO that has a member of the Brotherhood in this NGO will be included in the ban. It also says that any body that receives donation from the group or anybody that receives donation and has a member from the group will also be included in this ban. The properties of the Muslim Brotherhood, whether they are money, properties, liquid or assets, all of them will be confiscated, and an organization from the government will be managing them until all these court cases have been resolved and there's a final verdict.
All right, Adele, well, with that ruling though, is this the end of the Muslim Brotherhood? First their assets were frozen and now their activities are being banned. Is this the end for them?
It's definitely not the end of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's not just a speculation, but it's also based on facts from the history of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the third time in history that an Egyptian government would issue such a verdict, or an Egyptian court would try to ban the Muslim Brotherhood, freeze its assets and detain its members or hold them in prison. In 1948, under King Farouk, when Egypt was kingdom, the group was banned. In 1954, under President Gamal Abdel Nasser, the first Egyptian president, and today. So in the three cases, or at least the two previous cases, the Muslim Brotherhood continued underground, and it has been gaining even influence among the people and gaining their compassion. In the next elections that went on since the beginning of President Sadat's age, they started to appear in the parliament. President Hosni Mubarak, they had unprecedented presence despite they were banned in previous decades.
All right, CCTV's Adel Mahroui joining us there from Cairo. Thank you. Now, thousands of supporters of Morocco's secular conservative Istiklal, or the Independence Party, marched through the capital Rabat on Sunday in a rally against price rises. It was a junior member of the coalition government led by the Islamist PJD party, but it pulled out earlier this year after Morocco trimmed subsidies on fuel as part of efforts to get its public finances into shape. Istiklal has come out in opposition to the cuts in subsidies, which has led to fuel price rises. Their rally was small by Moroccan standards. Meanwhile, a rally by the pro-democracy 20 February movement, which led the Arab Spring demonstrations in the North African monarchy in 2011, attracted only a small number of demonstrators. We'll take a short break now on Africa Live, but still ahead. Defiant Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir says he will travel to the U.S. for a UN General Assembly. Sudan's President Omar Hassan al-Bashir, wanted by the International Criminal Court on genocide charges, said Sunday he planned to attend this week's UN General Assembly and had already booked a hotel in New York. Now, Washington has led calls for Bashir to face international justice over bloodshed in the now decade-old conflict in Sudan's Darfur region. A senior U.S. State Department official said last week that President Bashir would not, quote, receive a warm welcome, unquote, if he traveled to New York. President Bashir said he was not worried about U.S. authorities that they would want to arrest him as demanded by human rights groups because Washington is not a member of the International Criminal Court. A State Department official speaking on condition of anonymity said the department had received a visa application from President Bashir. Now, poaching of rhinos and elephants in Zimbabwe remains the single biggest threat to the survival of the country's revered wildlife. Though anti-poaching drives are being implemented, they are failing to curb the vice, which is being fueled by a thriving international market. Fry Mwakutuya has more on the survival of wildlife, in particular the endangered black rhino.
Meet Tatenda, Shanu and Kamchacha. As you may have noticed, their horns have been removed as a way of deterring poachers. Unfortunately, though, the base of the horn is the most valuable part, which still makes them a prime target for poachers who can fetch as much as 70,000 for a rhino horn on the open market. They're all part of an intensive breeding program here that seeks to regenerate Zimbabwe's rhino herd. Unfortunately, the rate at which they are being bred is not keeping pace with the rate at which they're being poached.
Once home to over 15,000 of this species in the 1970s, Zimbabwe's black rhino population has been decimated and now stands at a mere 400. But even that figure reduces every day. The crisis is a serious cause for concern.
It's getting out of hand, and it's getting to a stage whereby I feel by the year 2025, there are going to be none left.
Imire Wildlife Conservancy, about 100 kilometers from the capital Harare, has just relaunched a revolutionary breeding program to repopulate game parks. It's an intensive method that allows female rhino to produce more offspring than they normally would.
We wean the rhino at a certain age, which would be probably 1 or 2 years prematurely in comparison to that of the wild. So hence, she does come into cycle quicker. And I think that's the reason that Imire has been so successful in terms of production here, because, as I say, we've produced, from our 5 original females, we've produced 13 or so babies.
Forcing wild animals into an existence that is unnatural to them, though controversial, is seen as the only hope.
The chances for the local community, your tourists, to witness a rhino in the wild are very, very slim. This gives them the opportunity to see these animals at close quarters.
Between the late 1990s and early 2000s, Imire released 13 black rhino into the wild in Matusadona Game Park in the Zambezi Valley. None of the 13 is still alive. Such news makes this small gene pool all the more crucial for the survival of this fast disappearing species. Last month, poachers poisoned a watering hole in Wange with cyanide. Over 64 elephants and hundreds of other animals have died. Sadly, the death toll is still rising.
people in the communities know what's going on. They see no value in the rhino, and we've got to look at the society, the culture, the whole situation, and really have people empowered to look after the rhino because they see true value to themselves. They own the rhino. We will not save the rhino till the people want to save rhino.
Right now, though, economics overrides posterity.
Poverty is pushing people into poaching. As long as people are struggling to feed their families, we will not end poaching. We can try to reduce it, but it won't stop.
Those future generations risk reading about and seeing rhino in storybooks and on television, much like we do dinosaurs today. Unlike the relics that went into extinction millions of years ago for failure to adapt to changing environments, this species' demise, which is being wrought by human greed and cruelty, can be averted. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's now take a quick look at the business news with Rama Nyang. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up on Biz Africa tonight.